This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
So today is an intense day in the books. This is a very intense Darthiest of Darth, nadirest of nadir.
It's more in the stone than intense, really.
I will kick you off this podcast.
There's something about the word intense that just makes me absolutely go, oh, that really needs to be about being inside canvas tense.
What did any of us do to have you inflicted upon us?
Okay, I blame but please cut that all out. Please cut that all out. I don't want people to know about that.
Moving on from that terrible pun that I will be leaving in the editing.
Okay, fine.
We all have to suffer to Seth's terrible puns, regardless of where they came from. This is the darkest moment before the dawn kind of thing, right? Veins of Gold is the return from this darkness. This is the dark that prompts Veins of Gold.
Well, this is the moment, right? The whole, I don't want to be a threat to my loved ones. I don't want to kill my loved ones. Rand has really gotten to that point where that's the thing that makes Lewis, he's the kinslayer, right? He's the person who turned on his wife and children and all the rest of his family and servants and murdered them. And that's the thing that Rand didn't want to be. So in this moment, he really sort of proves to himself that he is insane. And that's where it's like, yeah, this is the low point. This is the moment where it's like, holy shit, I am as crazy as Lewis Theron was, because I was about to kill my father for doing no more than mentioning Codswain.
Right, for doing no more than trying to help him with an eyes to dies prompting. Not a killing offense, one would say. Yeah. Yeah, no, because it is, for so much of the series, he's been like, not yet. I'm not mad yet. I'm not losing it yet. I still have a little longer. I can still hold on. I can still become harder. And this is him going, I seem to have run out of rope. There seems to be no rope left.
I seem to be just crazy. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's no line that he won't cross now. You know, like Semirog forced him with Min, but this is him choosing it with Tam, and that's just a whole other level of, no, you are as bad as Luz Theron ever was.
Mm-hmm.
There is no line even to yourself there's no lie you can tell yourself. Like, you did the thing. Almost. Close enough.
Like, yeah, you stopped yourself, but only because you realized you were doing the thing.
Because he gets a chance to do again, because he remembered his lives and the Dark One saved him, because lessons learned and iterative stuff, but also it's bad to remember past lives. I'm not quite sure what the moral there is, but...
I think, again, the way Brandon Sanderson sort of puts his thumb on it and is like, wow, I couldn't have beat the Dark One without his corruption. It steals something away from it. Because I think just by pointing it out, it almost makes it like, okay, then what are you trying to say there, right? If you're going to point it out, say something about it.
I don't know. I could do with a little less Sanderson thumbprint on the whole Veins of Gold thing. But I do really like the cinematic darkness that is him spiraling down the drain for these two chapters. So maybe we should get into the read-in, which is yours to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. The one he lost, and our symbol is the dragon. What's the one he lost?
Which one of the hands
he
lost?
Okay,
it's that
cool.
line about two hands, one to destroy, the other to save. The other to save, which had he lost? And I don't know that he needs to have such a binary sense of saving the world versus death, but, you know, again, Darth Rand.
And it seems like he changes his mind at Veins of Gold.
Or, I mean, being suggested in chat by Pants, which mind did you lose? Because, you know, there are multiple minds in his brain.
Right.
So, I mean,
this one goes silent.
That was not how I interpreted it, but that's actually maybe a good layer.
Rand did not return to his rooms immediately. The failed meeting with the Borderlanders had left him feeling unhinged. Not because of their tricky attempt to pull him into Farmatting. That was frustrating, but it was not unexpected. People always tried to control and manipulate him. The Borderlanders were no different. No, it was something else that had unsettled him. something he couldn't quite define. And so he stalked through the Stone of Tyr, 2 Aiel maidens trailing behind him, his presence startling servants and unnerving defenders. The corridors twisted and turned. The walls were unadorned by tapestry, were the color of wet sand, but they were far stronger than any rock Rand knew, alien and strange, each smooth span a reminder that this place was not natural. Rand felt the same way. He had the form of a human. Indeed, he had the mannerisms and history of one, but he was a thing that no human, not even himself, could understand. A figure of legend, a creation of the One Power, as unnatural as ter'angreal or a fragment of Quendiar. They dressed him up like a king, just as they dressed these corridors with tasseled gold and red rugs, just as they hung the walls with those tapestries, each one depicting a famous Terran general. Those decorations were intended for beauty, but they were also intended to obscure. The patches of naked wall highlighted how alien the place was. Rugs and tapestries made it all feel more human. Just as giving Rand a crown and a fine coat allowed them to accept him. Kings were supposed to be a little different. Never mind his much more alien nature, hidden beneath the crown. Never mind his heart of a man long dead, his shoulders created to bear the weight of prophecy, his soul crushed by the needs, wants, and hopes of a million people. 2 hands, one to destroy, the other to save. Which had he lost? That was kind of a long read-in, but I wanted to get to the title.
That was the correct length read-in. There was only one read-in length, and that was it.
So yeah, he's being weird, right? He doesn't think of himself as human. He thinks of himself as something made out of the power, the dragon reborn that exists. And in some ways he is, right? He has these memories that change who he is, that makes him something very unique. Also, the amount of power he has at his disposal.
Yeah, but, also there's a healthy way to deal with that and an unhealthy way. The healthy way would be to actually talk with all of his other friends who have demigod powers and have a, support group where they all talk about how they have different but similar struggles. What he's doing here is the unhealthy thing where he's taking it all on himself and making it out into a persecution complex and isolating and ruminating and just not having anyone but himself to talk to about it and really just getting lost in time and in space. He's running through the hallways for hours on end, just trying to forget in the strain of physical exertion. He needs a support group. He needs a support group of Taviran and super powerful channelers where they all just talk about their feelings.
Meanwhile, the pattern's like, hey, here's your buddies. You have gateways. Here's your buddies. Here's where they are. Open a gateway. Go say hi. And he's like, fuck that.
Right?
Because he has everything he needs to open a gateway and go visit them. We see Codswain do it, right? From his vision, she opens a gateway and goes and visits Perrin, right? So why is he not, seeking out his friends?
Yeah, because he thinks he's internalized a specific take of the prophecies that make him feel like there's one way to be. And, again, you need to talk to someone other than yourself in order to learn that maybe some of your assumptions are wrong and maybe there's alternative explanations to what you thought was absolutely set in stone because you've literally never bounced your ideas off of a single other person. Right? He tried to talk with Moiraine about the prophecies, but I don't think anyone else has ever, really been having that conversation with him this whole time. And yet he's making all of these decisions about how he should dissociate and how he should see himself as alien and separate. And this is all stuff that is really baked into his interpretation of how the prophecies go. And it's I give Min props for becoming a philosophy major on her own home study in just a couple of months, but Rand is giving himself even more credit than Min is claiming, and he has had way less time and energy to devote to it than she has. Rand, you need to be bouncing some of these ideas off of someone. He had Herod Fell for a little bit. That was good. And then Herod Fell got killed. And he has not picked these conversations up with Min to the same degree, at least not on page that we've seen. It just this is the autistic struggle. You're just ruminating on your own specific way of looking at the world, and you have no idea that these are actually really normal struggles, even if they are unique. He has lots of friends who have similar struggles that most normal people can't understand, right? It's like, yeah, you're not all the Dragon Reborn, but none of you are as strong as Nynaeve, right? None of you have battle memories specifically like Matt. None of you have wolf smell like Perrin. You all have unique stuff going on.
And I feel like this chapter is, these actually pair of chapters is very much about the use of Callandor in the last battle.
Yeah.
That's sort of like the undertone. Like it's also about Rand, but what I didn't realize when I first read them is how much these are really about why Rand needs to use Callandor in the last battle.
Big time.
Yeah. And why the Chosen Call. And what he's really ruminating over in the beginning of this chapter is, yes, himself and what's going on with him, but also his failures around Callandor, right? And why the Chosen Call was such a better tool, right? So he's like, first he's like, oh, my first real failure is like fighting the Shan-Chan. And he's like, no. And Lewis Theron corrects him. He's like, no. Your first real failure was the first time you tried to use Callandor and you tried to heal the dead little girl.
Yeah. Callandor is a huge presence in both these chapters.
And so there's a lot of little nuggets spread out between this. There's the conversation between Rand and Lewis Theron going on while he's thinking about Callandor, while he's thinking about himself. And it's just, there's these great nuggets split around. This is a really good chapter to be in Rand and Lewis Theron's head.
Yeah, for sure. We also get the very Sandersonian, I think very Mormon thing about like the voice in his heart, like being all upset. Not the voice in his head, the voice in his heart. And the voice in his heart vanishes when he throws Tam to the ground. Like it's kind of like Egwene's chair, right? He's like putting one of those like little backbeat things you can check in on, but it feels just so painfully Sanderson that it's not smooth like the chair.
No, because I feel like what we've been seeing is the original Rand, right? It's the voice of the farm boy Rand who's been subverted by this king and by LTT in his head. It's the part of him that's not insane. It's kind of how I think of it.
Sure, yeah. The memory of the man that was pre all this stress. The boy, really. I also wonder, if 1 million people? Is there really only 1 million people in this world? Pretty sure there should be a couple million people.
Oh, where's that from?
In the intro, his soul crushed by the needs, wants, and hopes of 1 million people. I think that might be figurative million.
Yeah.
But I feel like even this world has to have more than 1 million people in it.
It might just be the countries that has direct control over. But still, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the world doesn't have 1 billion people. I'm sure that's far too many. But
I feel like just in terms of like Aiel, we're over 1 million.
Right.
It's
probably like a 40 days and 40 nights kind of number. It's not actually meant to. The number of zeros isn't important. It's a big number. That's what's important. He's going through all the things he thinks are bothering him, and he starts out with Huron. He's like, Huron is what's bothering me. Huron is the issue, which, like, I mean, in many ways, Huron is a precipitating incident of tonight's stressful walk. It's not part of it.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, like that treatment of the way his old friend was really this moment where he's like, man, I am not the same person.
Right. The surprise on Huron's face was more authentic than anything any of his current entourage could say.
Mm-hmm. And so that does seem to be one of this, but there's a whole series of events that's happening that accumulates when his father comes into play.
Yeah, because he moves from thinking about Huron and what was going on in his life at the time to thinking about his other friends, which leads to thinking about Elaine. And like, so, he's escalating which relationship he's thinking about. Huron was pretty low and then Elaine's pretty high on the emotional intensity. But he runs through that whole gamut in like 2 paragraphs. So, again, rumination spirals are kind of his whole night at this point. And he's trying to just push his emotions down. I am strong. Longing's an emotion you cannot feel. Nostalgia gets him nowhere. Like, he is literally running from his emotions. Like, literally running down the hallway saying, I can't have these feelings. Like, you cannot more literally run away from your emotions if you try. This is the most literal running away from your emotions.
Meanwhile, Lewis Theron, do we run from the past then? Yes, that is well. Better to run and face it. As Rand's running away.
Be a cycle breaker, Rand. Luz is giving you the clue. Yeah, he thinks about seeing a shaman in his dreams. He runs to the Callandor room, the Heart of the Stone, and ruminates on that a lot, kind of kicking off the Callandor theme for the next 2 chapters.
Right. So the crystal sword is in Codswain's possession, which we know she entrusted it to some of her Aes Sedai allies. She just pops it out when Rand asks for it. So that's not really relevant who has it, but somebody's holding on to it.
A2V2. Because she says like a pair of Aes Sedai who have retired from the world. So I'm just like, okay, so Adelius and Vandene, but like a different pair of not biological sisters who did the exact same thing, because Catswain's been around for a long time and she knows several of these.
Yeah, and so he's just like, and why is the Corinthian cycle keep mentioning the Callandor? Why? And it doesn't mention, the Chosen Call, which is crazy because I cleansed the source. You think, there's nothing in the Corinthian prophecy
Koreathon
about cleansing the source. Koreathon, sorry.
It's not Corinthian.
Corinthian is how I always pronounced it when I was reading the books back in the day.
Sure. That makes sense. I mean, he probably was riffing off of that word, if we're being honest.
Sorry, how do you say it properly again?
Koreathon.
Koreathon, thank you. So yeah, the Koreathon prophecies definitely, they don't really mention the Chosen Call. And it's like, they don't really mention the cleansing at all, right? It's this thing that had to happen.
There is one line, but yeah, it's not a huge thing. Yeah, he spends a lot of time thinking about why Callandor can't be a real part of, like, he's like, no, it's a lie, it's a trap, and it all hinges on how a man has to subject himself to the will of a woman, when it's like, were we not told early on that the most amazing feats of the Age of Legends were accomplished by men and women working together? There's nothing about subjugation in the concept of cooperation. Like, this is such a, again, quintessential toxic masculinity that he has just imbibed to the point that he has crystallized pure toxic masculinity.
But if he was naturally in a circle with 2 women and he was a man, he would have control of the circle, which is natural, clearly. But Callandor reverses that.
It's like,
and that's why it's a trap.
It's okay to not always be in charge. And it's okay to sometimes be in charge. Like there is no biological necessity for you to be in a particular position on the leadership scale of a given situation.
But, he's trying to seal the Dark One's prison. And Lewis Theron, remember, the women wouldn't work with him last time on his plan.
So now Rand's reaction is to not work with women at all?
Ever.
Like, be a cycle breaker, Rand. God.
And I also like Lewis Theron, so we learn a little bit about the Chosen Call, right? So the Chosen Call, I think, were built to seal the Dark One's prison, but Lewis Theron says the plan would not work. The brute force would not contain him. They called my plan harsh, but these weapons they created, they were too dangerous, too frightening. No man should hold such power. So Lewis Theron himself, Rand in his previous life, thought they were too powerful to use and too dangerous. And that brute force, right? This is the reasoning why Chosen Call isn't any good for sealing the Dark One's prison. Brute force won't get it done.
Yeah, sometimes you need finesse.
Yeah.
And that means that bigger is not always better.
And what they need is the true power. So they need the Chosen Call. They don't know it yet, but they need the fact that it's a true power Saw Angreal. And that then he can pull it through Moradin.
Yeah.
So that's sort of that's the key to the last battle that they're trying to figure out here, is like, why do we keep needing the Callandor as opposed to the Chosen Call? It seems like he would just use Callandor.
Right. Yeah. And also I feel like the Chosen Call is something that they made at the last minute, whereas Callandor was a much more like artifact kind of thing even before the end of the War of Power. Like, I don't know, they feel in different classes.
Well, the origin of Callandor is very, very weird to me, right? That's something that I feel like Jordan has never really given us a straight answer on. Chosen Call was built like in an effort, group effort to...
Yeah, that's a war effort.
That's a war effort, right? Like, we know about that. Callandor was a mistake. Callandor was they were making as many powerful Sangreal as they could, and the Chosen Call was a mistake. And it had a flaw in it, and that flaw...
Callandor was a mistake?
Callandor was a mistake.
Wait, it was a flawed prototype? I feel like I've heard this before.
Mm-hmm. Not even a prototype, just they were making Sangreal for the war effort, and this one was just flawed. That's what we have from his statements. So
Callandor and the Chosen Call are both from the War of Power?
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know what... Well, I know why, because Eye of the Worldisms. I always kind of assumed Callandor was, like, maybe not as old as the Horn of Valir, but still significantly older than the War of Power. Interesting. You're saying this, and now I'm like, I feel like I have heard this before. This is not truly new information, but I completely forgot, so it might as well be new. Huh.
I believe Chodan Call was made later. Callandor was made earlier.
Right. The Chodan Call was like, what, completed in the last days of the war or something like that. It was, the final. So yeah, again, why is Callandor the one that gets to be in the prophecies? What makes it special? There was apparently a lot of war effort to Terangrial that could have been for that. What about Callandor makes it worth being this?
One would assume the flaws, right? One would assume that the problems that happened by total accident, as far as we are aware, in the making of Callandor, which are, one, that it literally lets you take control of the man using it, if you're one of the two women, and two, it's a true power sangreal, not just a one power sangreal. Both of those seem to be accidental, as far as I can tell.
So you're telling me that the fate of the entire world and all the prophecies and all of the everything rests on a manufacturing accident?
Taviran?
We have all this work that goes into these bloodlines and these family relationships, and of this one blood raised by this other blood, and it's so important that these 5 kids that saved the world are all related one way or another. But also it was a manufacturing accident that made all these prophecies possible. Like, which is it? I
mean, don't forget, it was preserved, right? Like, the women who created Ruidian had Callandor and put it in the Stone of Tyr and put all those wards around it to protect it for him specifically, right? Like, so much of it was set up by that group of Aes Sedai. Yeah.
But also just a completely random accident is integral to the entire thing. I guess that's how the world works, but I don't know.
That's specifically how Taviran works.
I could do with more random accidents in my cast. I wish the cast was less all from the same friend group. But whatever. It's fine. That's just me.
So he sort of tells them, don't defend, guard this place no more. There's nothing here of worth. I'm not sure there ever was. And it's sort of this repudiation of everything that went on in the stone, right? His whole taking it over and going there, and his realization that he had to be the dragon reborn, and taking the stone was proof that he was the dragon reborn. And like, all of a sudden Callandor was this token that he had that was going to help him win the last battle. And he's like, I don't think that's the case anymore. And it's just real depression around, like, I don't care anymore. Whatever. It's all gone to shit anyway. You know, he doesn't believe anymore.
Yeah, he's like, well, the destination so far is shit, so I guess the journey is also shit, right? He's like, everything I've done, everything I've accomplished, everything I've learned, it didn't get me to where I want to be right now, so it's all trash.
And he's saying the prophecies, they're going to do what, I'm not going to have any choice. I'm just going to do what prophecies say. It doesn't matter how hard I try. It doesn't matter what I care about. The prophecies would see that he did what he was supposed to. They were more manipulative, more devious than any Aes Sedai.
I mean, I think the prophecies are kind of what you make of them. You know, I'm really with Tam on it doesn't matter what situation you have in front of you, how you respond to it is something that you can control and can make all the difference. Like, I'm really with Tam on that. And yeah, when Rand is like, well, they're more manipulative than an Aes Sedai, it's like, or they're more helpful than an Aes Sedai. Like, there's so many ways of looking at the prophecies, and manipulative seems like a bit of a projection.
Yeah, a little bit. But he's feeling very trapped. Like, he feels like he doesn't have options. He feels like, you know, he has a couple of failures under his belt. He had a string of successes, and then the first time he meets real obstacles where he can't actually get it done, he's kind of crashing out. He's like, no, it's not worth it.
And it's like, failure is a part of life, my dude. We all have to fail at stuff in order to, like, have a life worth living. Like, yeah, you're, a demigod meant to save the world, but like, you're still gonna make mistakes. And yeah, trying to resurrect a child who's very definitely dead is a mistake. That was a bad call.
No,
but
yeah.
like, you only hurt yourself. You didn't hurt the little girl. She was already dead. So, it's okay to continue to live after that. But also remember that it's a funny callback when he's thinking back to that time, because it's, as a meta of readers, we know that, yes, back when Robert Jordan thought it would be a trilogy.
Yeah, he was so insane back then because he thought at most he was doing 3 more books.
Yeah, and it's just like, we are returning to that level of insanity because we are finally at the last 3 books.
He's sort of thinking bad things about the Borderlanders. The last battle loomed, and he spent what little time he had writing to meet with people who insulted him. And he's just like, it's just negative thoughts all around.
I mean, I get the frustration. Like, I get it. Like, you're trying to, like, psych yourself up for the end of the world, and there's people who want to play politics. Like, I get the frustration, but I think I should actually firebomb their army is just not a sane next thought.
Yeah, and he's basically thinking, like, instead of going and meeting with the Borderlanders, I'm just going to finish off the Shan-Chan. I've got the Choden Call. It's a better tool, right? The Callandor failed me. That's how I failed. That was back in Path of Daggers, right? When he lightnings the Shan-Chan and essentially wipes out his own army. And he's like, no, screw that. I'm just going to go there by myself, so there's nobody on my side I can hurt. And I'm just going to balefire everybody. And I'm going to use the Choden Gall, because I used a tiny fraction of its power to take out Natrum's Barrow. So I can just do that a bunch.
Yeah, I'll just delete the Shan-Chan
essentially
from the continent. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, how many times has he done this? Well, I got a bigger, better tool, so I'm going to go blow up the army. And then it never works. And yeah, he says he's going to take the maidens this time. I'm sure that would make such a big difference if he'd actually followed through with this plan, which he doesn't because of what happens with Tam. But, at least he was going to bring the maidens. He finally learned that lesson. Not that it would matter now.
So yeah, as he's gathering the maidens and ready to go and just be like, okay, I'm going to take out the Shan-Chan. I guess he's going to bring the maidens, so he might balefare them by accident. But okay, whatever. He's using the better tool, so he thinks he's safe. And that in comes Tam, right? Like, that's the whole, like, surprise that Codswain has been planning for him that Nynaeve helped with.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's more like in comes Rand to the room that Tam's been waiting for him in. But yeah, he goes stomping off to prepare to go to war in the middle of the night, and there's a surprise dad in the room. Surprise dad.
Yeah.
And if you thought that Huron was a blast from the past, this is Tam,
who we've seen a little bit interacting with Perrin, right? So it's nice that we don't just like have a Tam that we haven't seen in 8 books or 10 books or whatever, right?
Yeah, it is funny how we as the readers are like, oh yeah, Tam, we've seen him recently. And it's like, oh right, Rand, you haven't seen him since like chapter 5 of book 1.
Right. Yeah. And you haven't seen him awake since, since the attack in your farm, right?
Yeah, he gave him a little bit of advice before going back to sleep that night. Like, that's it. And yeah, and just like with Parrot, we've seen this over and over again. Tam is comfort. Tam is a rock. Tam is solid. And Rand cannot do solid. Rand is Quandiar. He can't do regular Earth. That's silly.
No, and so there's this interaction between the two of them, which I really like, and it feels like it's helping Rand until the moment when he finds out that Tam was sent by Codswain. And then something happens, right? Like, I don't know how to describe this interaction and how it turns. It's like a moment when it feels like his own kin betrays him to him.
Yeah, it's because Tam didn't come on his own.
Yeah.
That's what does it for him. Because, and Tam describes it to Nynaeve and Cadsuane later, like, I was saying everything you had told me to say, and then I decided to go off script, and that's when things changed. Because it didn't seem like Rand was responding the way I would expect him to the stuff you had prepared for me, so I decided to go off script. And that, that was what Tam attributes the change to, but I think it's really obvious on the page. It's the fact that Tam didn't seek Rand out. is where that betrayal comes from. The fact that Tam is there and providing the hope of comfort is the machinations of Aes Sedai. That's what feels like a betrayal. Because then if he does reach for Tam and enfold him in a hug like he wants to, that's what the Aes Sedai wanted. And that's like the only constant in Rand's mind for a year or more now is don't do what the Aes Sedai want.
Yeah, and so, okay, let's talk about the interaction between Rand and Tam before we get to the breaking point. Because there's a lot of what I would call foreshadowing for the next couple of books, because Rand is in the future, right? Mat and Perrin's storyline through the next book happens in parallel with what's going on with Rand right now.
Right, or what's been happening over the course of this book, yeah.
Right. So all the visions that Rand has in this chapter and all the information that Tam conveys actually hasn't happened to those characters yet. So it's kind of foreshadowing in this book what's going to be happening with them.
Yeah, so we start out with Tam being the kind of person who has a better time talking when he has something to use his hands on, which, like, mood. And Rand learns that, despite the fact that he didn't send messages to the Two Rivers, Tam still heard about all of the army stuff. Because, Rand is still trying to protect the Two Rivers, so he didn't send directly to them for soldiers. But, of course, Perrin had taken all of the soldierly people and gone on the road, so it wouldn't matter.
Which kind of defeats he's like, oh, well, now you're involved in the war, which I was trying to protect you from, but...
Right. And then we get the update about Elaine's mother, which it's funny because as readers, we know about the fact that she's Morghese, but we haven't seen Perrin and company learn that information.
Right.
So to have Tam be like casually like, oh, yeah, we had a whole thing with the White Cloaks and with Morghese coming out as Morghese, and like it was a whole thing anyway. And you're as a reader like, wait, what? I missed that?
Yeah. What? No. What? Yeah.
I would remember if Perrin suddenly was faced with Morghese. That seems like that'd be a memorable scene. And yes, it will be in the next book.
Mm-hmm. That's that foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is not really the right word, but I don't know what else to use.
It's not foreshadowing because it's not in the plot. It's like meta foreshadowing. It's more like he's just telling you what's going to happen in the next book really plainly.
It's more like he wrote both scenes and thought he would have this one and have that in this book and just couldn't include it and ended up cutting it in different ways.
Yeah. We can take that term from Spidoinkle, a cross-shadowing.
Yeah. I like that, Spidoinkle.
We need a term for this because I think it's a very specific to Brandon Sanderson writing these 3 books sort of thing. So there's not going to be a word for it. So we have to come up with our own. Jordan
had some time sync things as well, right? The rooster crowing for the bubble of evil, right? The
Winter's Heart.
Winter's Heart, like that whole, oh God, yeah.
Winter's Heart.
The cleansing.
Winter's Heart.
Yeah. So like this is not an unusual thing for him to do. This is just a slightly different way of doing it, but it's through the visions that Rand is having and through the information that Tam is conveying. And that's like the swirly colors is definitely something that Jordan had put in there, and it is a good way to provide a different sync across all the different timelines. But yeah, I don't think I realized the first few times I read it just how much we had missed of Perrin's timeline and how much catching up we had to do. Because we go through all of Perrin's timeline before he witnesses Rand's moment on the mountain, which happens at the end of this book.
Right. So yeah, then Rand says, we really shouldn't spend our time talking about the news, even though, honestly, that's what family does when they get together is they exchange news about their acquaintances. That's kind of the point, but whatever. And they have this whole moment where Tam's like, wow, you're really a king. And also, you do know you're adopted, right? That's a thing we should probably address. And Rand says, yeah, I'm a completely different person now. My boyhood self died. I'm gonna treat you like a honored uncle or something. And it's just this whole like awkward king thing. It's cute. It's really cute to see Rand in his full Emperor Rand mode, but just how weird that looks against his father who has changed so little, and like that incongruity just makes it all feel small and farm sized. It's cute.
It's cute. And also, like, whenever I go home, whenever I see my parents, I feel like I'm a teenager again. It doesn't matter how old I am. There's that moment where it's like, oh my God, I'm just, which is not always the healthiest thing in the world.
But it's very real.
But it's very real. And for Rand, it is, it's this moment where he's like, I want you to call me son. You are my father. And like, he's sort of retreating into this formality that he doesn't really know how to get out of, because that's how he's been treating everyone around him, and all he wants is the comfort of his father, and he can't ask for it. And that's where you get this line: the quiet voice in his heart was screaming.
Which, good line.
Yeah. And even the line before that: if it were known that the dragon reborn relied upon the strength of a shepherd. Rand is a shepherd.
That's what I was thinking. Like, Rand, you have no other strength.
Right.
You are a shepherd. That is your strength. I mean, you have other strengths, but like that is who you are.
Right.
Because of Tam. And, in Post Veins of Gold, he says Tam is the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Being raised by a shepherd really, really helped.
And all of Rand was a shepherd, so his strength comes from being a shepherd, right? Like, that's
truly
it's his foundation.
Truly.
So it's like, it's the irony in that statement is, oh my God, what if people knew? What if people knew? Right? Maybe they might like you more, Rand. They might like you more.
Right. And it also reminds me of like the Tuon thing, where she's like, well, I don't know if he could have been born, an impoverished rural shepherd, because he carries himself like an ivory tower aristocrat.
Oh, that's just
Nepo
blood.
Baby. Yeah, exactly. So there's just all these layers of like, no. The shepherd thing is what makes him who he is. The strength of a shepherd is what has always been shining through with him.
No, and this is just awkward. Like, I wasn't sure if I should have hidden the fact that you were adopted. And Rand's like, you have done well, my vassal.
You have done the world a great service.
You have protected me from death by hiding
Here
the
is your
fact
purse.
Yes. And Tam's
For
like,
your reward.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad I did it then. I guess that was the right thing.
When Tam calls him my lord, I just want
daggers.
to fall through the floor. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. The world owes you a debt. I will see that you are cared for the rest of your life. I appreciate that, my lord, but it isn't necessary. I have what I need, right? Like, Tam doesn't need taking care of. He's solid.
He's Tam. He's like a lieutenant in Perrin's army. He's the right-hand man of the mayor of the Two Rivers. Like, he's gonna be fine. But I get the distance, right? Rand is doing his king thing because that's what gets positively rewarded for the last year and a half of his life, is acting like a god emperor, king, despot. And his father is like, son, what in the good goddamn are you doing?
I do like that they talk about Blade. Then they retreat into basically sports for dudes, right? Which is sword fighting.
Oh my God. And then they turn to sports because men.
Because men.
Oh my God. I didn't even think of it like that, but you're so right.
So Rand is like, were you really a blademaster? And so we get a little bit of backstory there, right? Tam says, I killed the man who was one, did it in front of witnesses. I've never forgiven myself for it, though it needed doing.
I'm assuming a Valda-esque situation, a Valda and Galad-esque situation, where a man needed to, do a trial beneath the light, duel to the death thing, and it was for, a bad thing.
I feel like we've had theories on who Tam fought.
We've had theories that Tam could have killed during the Aiel War. It could have been during the Aiel War.
Right.
It doesn't give us any more context here.
Because I'm pretty sure Janduin killed Layman.
We made that headcanon, yeah. It was his real dad, not his adopted dad.
Right, not his adopted dad. And so for a while I was thinking maybe it was Layman, right? Because Layman was a sword master and had a Heron Mark sword, right? And the whole it needed doing would kind of point to like killing Layman to end the war. And it would be kind of cool if Tam turned on him and killed him. And that's what ended the war. Yeah. But
I feel like that scandal would have probably made the news rounds, though.
Agreed. And I think it makes much more sense for Janduin to be the one who did it.
Yeah, only one of his dads can kill Layman. Layman's only got one life to give.
And that's what Janduin was off doing when Rand was born, right? That's why he wasn't there.
Right. That's why he wasn't there to protect Shael and
whereas
all of that.
Tam was there. That's how he got Rand, right? So he wasn't off killing
Janduin.
Janduin. So And he probably had the Heron Mark sword for a while before that moment, is what I'm thinking as well. Because that's kind of the moment when he left service.
Yeah, right. He left after because he had a baby. You can't be a soldier and have a newborn baby.
Right. And it was the end of the war, so that would make sense that that's when he would leave service, right?
Right. Yeah, he's got a wife and a baby, and the war is over, so he's got his war pension and whatever war wounds he's accumulated. Like, yeah, it's time to go home. Raise to back.
But my assumption would be he had the Heron Mark blade for some time before that.
I would assume that Tam got his Heron Mark blade fairly early on in his sword career. I bet he was a pretty quick study and a natural at it, and achieved the rank of blademaster long before he achieved his overall reputation that culminated in his presence in the Aiel War.
The only other clue I have is I thought he fought in the White Cloak War, right? So I was thinking that maybe it was one of the White Cloaks that he defeated.
I don't think there's very many White Cloak blade masters, because they're all dumbasses. I mean, Valda was one, obviously, but like
Valda, Pedron Nile was one, wasn't he? Before he was old.
Probably.
I actually don't know if he was a blade master. He was one of the great generals. I don't know if he was a blade master.
Probably.
Galad.
Well, Galad because he killed Valda. So again, the numbers are not really going up with that. But no, I just imagine some, lordly person who was also really good at swordplay, but, accosted a regular peasant, and Tam stepped in, and one way and another he ended up with a blade master's sword because he's honorable and talented. And then probably after that was like, I guess I gotta go into military service.
Well, because he was a guard in Tyr. He's part of the companions. So one wonders, like, maybe he stepped up. He was a normal guard, and he, like, fought someone to protect the king, took down a blade master when he really shouldn't. It wasn't, thought that a normal guard would be able to do that. And then that was what got him into the companions, right? Is that moment of heroism where he took down a blade master to protect the king.
Right.
Of Tyr.
No, I could see that where he throws himself into the line of fire and ends up, heroically rewarded and honored and traumatized. I could see that. Because he says he never forgave himself for it. So,
right.
Clearly that was traumatizing, even if he seems to have shrugged off most of the war trauma. Like, he's not entirely unscathed.
Mm-hmm. And probably the noble he ended up saving was probably a piece of shit, right? Because, Terran noble, right?
Terran nobles, I wouldn't protect them. But, he was getting paid. So, you do your job. Maybe don't have that job, but, whatever.
The prequel I want, the adventures of Tam and Jane Farstrider.
Seriously. They meet in a bar once in the middle of the book, and the rest of the time they're having completely separate adventures.
Absolutely. But somehow those adventures are always related across time and space.
Yeah, totally. All right, so then, Tam tries to be like, man, life is strange, isn't it? And Rand's like, nihilism! I can't see the beauty in the strangeness. Absolutely unacceptable.
And Tam is kind of making the point of, like, Rand saying, hey, my fate is chosen for me. I have no choice. And Tam's like, yeah, but even if you had a choice, you would still do the right thing. So why does it matter? And Rand is just not getting it. He's like, I don't want to have to do the right thing. And Tam's like, but you would do the right thing because I know you and I know who you are. And I don't know why you're hung up on this, like, you have to do it thing. When, like,
exactly.
It doesn't matter. You would do the right thing anyway.
And, like, you do have a choice to not be absolutely grumpy and repressed about all your emotions while you do the thing you know you're going to do. Right? Like, it's fine to be the grumpy eagle going on your stupid health walk sometimes, but that's not supposed to be your way of life.
And he's like, hey, I think you probably can survive this, right? I think the pattern owes you. And Rand's like, no, there's no way. When we know, of course, he's going to survive it, right? He's just going to get a different body.
Right. And it's more importantly, he has to go into that fight believing he can survive. Like, that mindset matters more than if he survives or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's, Tam gets it, right? Like, I mean, he came out of a war able to have a wife and child and, be a well-adjusted person, right? Like, he knows it's possible to live through a war, both literally and figuratively. So he's like, Rand, you very much have the opportunity to yes and this, to tuck your knees and roll and like get through this. You don't have to just like walk headfirst into a wall. You can be smart about this. You can be adaptable. And Rand is like, how dare it, in classic teenager fashion, I know what I'm doing. Like, this was me being taught how to drive a car. Like, always like, I know what I need to do. Like, no, I don't. I'm learning how to drive a car. I have no idea what I need to do. But it's more important to tell your parent to go away than it is to actually hear what they have to say.
Parents know nothing.
Absolutely not.
When you're a teenager. I don't know why parents get so dumb when you're a teenager. It's like
between the age of 10 and 20, parents become really stupid.
Yeah.
And then once you turn 21, they start to make a little bit of sense again. And like, I do get it. Like, being conscripted for a war sucks. I get that. But like, still, you can choose how to face it and how to move through it. And Rand is choosing the worst way. Anyway.
And he's seen so much death around him. It's like, dude, like, ever since Ingtar sacrificed himself, I feel like you should have more perspective around this.
Right. I mean, even Tam here says, like, the soldier who dies for money and the soldier who dies for loyalty are both dead, but there's a difference between them. One death meant something the other didn't. Ingtar, exhibit Ingtar, right? Like, yeah, you've seen this over and over again, that a death can mean something, and yet somehow not for you, which, I mean, I guess very neurodivergent, right? Everyone else can have trauma and I can be gentle with them, but I need to be perfect and not have any response to the traumas I've experienced. I guess that's kind of where he's at.
And also, it's like, how do you want people to remember you? Do you want people to remember you as this angry, grumpy, hard man? Or do you want them to remember you as someone who cared about them and wanted the best for the people in his life?
Yeah. Like, you claim to miss Elaine, but could you please be someone that Elaine would miss?
Right. That's funny. So every once in a while, I start talking to my coworkers, and I'm now of an age where some of my coworkers are now much younger than I am, right? Like, they're in their early 20s. I'm in my early 40s. There's a 20-year gap there. Like, and sometimes they have questions, and I start talking, and I'm like, holy shit, I do sound like that old man who's like, well, you... But it's crazy. I was the age of Rand, and now I'm much closer to the age of Tam.
Yeah.
Because Tam's not that old, right? That's the thing. He's like, is he even late 40s, early 50s? Like, because he was young when he found Rand, right? Or was he like 30 when he found Rand? That's what I think.
He ran away from home as a young man and came back many years later with a wife and baby.
Okay.
And it's now been 20 years since he came back with a wife and baby. So if he ran away at, say, 18 and then was away for like 20
a decade
years, yeah, 10 years, then that's 28. And then another 20 years, that's 48. So yeah, I think early 50s is probably a pretty realistic age for him.
minimum.
Yeah, minimum. Somewhere in his 50s, I think, is probably the pocket for him. So yeah, not that much older than you. You're definitely closer to Tam than Rand at this point.
Right. Let's see if we have an actual age on the wiki. Date of birth 940, so he's 60.
Okay, yeah.
So late
he
50s.
Was away for closer to 20 years.
Yeah. He ran away in 956, so he was 16 when he ran away.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a tragic backstory there. I don't know why a 16-year-old boy would run away from an idyllic home life, you know?
And he's got no family, right, left. He comes back, and there's no family. He's got a farm.
An old family farm. Generations of work have gone into it. And then we get to the real... Well, first of all, we get this great line from Tam, "Kings don't whine, they deliberate," which I think is fantastic. I don't know who he's paraphrasing, but fantastic. But then he gets to the real crux of this whole everything. Why do you go to battle? The why is what matters. That's the core of Veins of Gold. That's the core of the purpose of free will in the actual last battle, Dark One confrontation. The why is what matters. Why you go to battle or don't go to battle in the case of the Tuatha, right? Like, why you do something is all that matters, really, in life.
And then, Tam kind of mutters under his breath, "God damn, you're bad. I wish Codswain had said something earlier." And that...
Snap.
Sets him off. Yeah.
Not the C word.
Right. Now, is it possible that he's just losing the argument and he doesn't want to do it anymore? And the first thing that sets him off, I don't know. Maybe he goes off a little hard because he doesn't like what he's hearing from Tam. But I think it is mostly just Cotswain.
I mean, I think maybe he goes off hard because he likes what he's hearing from Tam, and now he knows that Cadswain's poisoned that well. So now how much of what he just liked hearing was actually Cadswain. Yeah, so that just sets Rand off, and his rumination spirals snap into a straight line.
And I think this is the important part. His emotions seeing Tam were so strong they had worn away the ice. Too much affection was like too much hatred. Either one made him feel, which was something he could not risk. And I think that when you look at Codswain, that's sort of what she's been doing. She's been sort of making him hate her in order to keep his emotions up, right? Both of those are breaking his hardness, because his hardness is all about not showing any emotion. Codswain, her plan that people, it's like, why is she such a bully, right? Why is she so annoying? She's trying to make Rand hate her. Like, that is literally what she's trying to do. She's succeeding. And then this is the opposite of that, right? This is someone who's making him feel overwhelming love and comfort, and that's breaking him in the other way. And it's kind of like flexing a rod back and forth, right? Make it feel love, make it feel hate. Make it feel love, make it feel hate. You're going to break it, and it's not going to be hard anymore. And so... yeah, I feel like this is if I've come to a conclusion that if Codswain actually had a plan, it's that to stress him in those two ways is to make him feel annoyed and then to make him feel loved and just to make him feel.
Yeah, to make him feel like she wanted him to be anything but flat and emotionless. And yeah, she really laid it on hard with the spicy on the one end, and yeah, the snapback here is, I think she may have miscalculated the load-bearing capacity of the structure.
Yeah. I think she should have done more of the making him feel loved part of that.
Yeah, well, probably she would have if Min had opened up sooner. Probably Min was her first choice for the love avenue. But yeah, Rand handles this very badly. He is so unused to having his emotions be in control that he goes from I must be ice to fuck you, I will burn the world down in like half a page.
Well, and here's what I think is most interesting, right? As he's channeling, the void shattered, but somehow Saidin remained, which is whenever the void has gone away, he's lost control of the power as well. And so that's, I think, really interesting that like he's controlling the power inside his emotions as opposed to being separate from them. And that's never been something he's been able to do before.
I mean, Nynaeve does it all the time.
Well,
so,
yes. Yeah.
It is possible.
It just shows you, I think, how insane he is, because he's basically being nuts about the way he's channeling. He's channeling in an insane way because he's never been able to control his whole. Hold on. My dog is definitely destroying something valuable right now. Yeah, just chewing up some of Never's childhood artwork.
Boy.
Like yesterday, he was totally calm. Most days he's totally calm, but today he's clearly been wanting attention during the recording. And the second I shut him out, he got frustrated and went and destroyed something. Rather than I should have put him in his crate or let him in, not let him wander the house freely, but not have access to me. That's when he goes nuts.
What a needy baby.
Yeah, he's a very needy baby. He's very sweet, but he definitely has some frustrations and some issues around abandonment. But yeah, no, Spidoinko, it was totally my fault. Yeah, there's definitely a level of managing him. He's not being punished for chewing up the thing. It just got taken away from him.
All right, so where are we? Yeah, we're talking about you, dog.
Just him ranting about Codswain for a while. She manipulates me and she manipulates you. Everyone ties their strings to me. Rah, right? Like he's absolutely in crash out mode.
Yeah, the line, he had lost control, but he didn't care. They wanted him to feel. He would feel then. Is like, oh no. Like I've tipped over that edge of like, I've been being so good and now I have no patience left. So all of the things I was shoving down are now coming out. Like, obviously I've never had the power to like destroy people with my mind, but like, I feel this, oh, you don't want me to feel, well, or you wanted me to feel and I wasn't, okay, fine, I'm going to do it now. Like, I empathize with this at a soul level.
And then I think I just want to read us out for this chapter.
Yeah, do it.
Screaming at them all, he wove threads of air and fire. Louis Theron howled in his head. Sidene tried to destroy both of them, and the quiet voice inside Rand's heart vanished. A prick of light grew in front of Rand, sprouting from the center of the access key. The weaves for balefire spun before him, and the access key grew brighter as he drew in more power. By that light, Rand saw his father's face looking up at him, terrified. What am I doing? Rand began to shake, the balefire unraveling before he had time to loose it. He stumbled backward in horror. What am I doing? Rand thought again. No more than I've done before, Louis Theron whispered. Tam continued to stare at him, face shadowed by the night. Oh, light, Rand thought with terror, shock, and rage. I am doing it again. I am a monster. Still holding tenuously to Sidene, Rand wove a gateway to Ebudar, then ducked through, fleeing from the horror in Tam's eyes.
Rough.
Yep. Oof. There's something about that voice disappearing and then, like, Rand realizing what he's doing. Almost like that voice comes back into Rand somehow.
Yeah. It's like he's been pushing it outside of himself, and it has now finally slipped back inside and is his voice again. Or something. Yeah. Or he lost it and he's just had a moment of realization that when he hit rock bottom that he stopped himself. I don't know. Yeah. There's because he doesn't have the realization then, right? He has a moment where he's walking around. He's still planning on destroying Ebudar. Yeah, no, he has like 2 more crisis moments before he actually comes to the conclusion.
So he's clearly just in crisis, and he's almost started his walkabout in the beginning of this chapter when he's walking through the stone, and like he's just encountering different things on this walk. He encounters Tam, he encounters the Shan Chan, he encounters, and then he goes and thinks on the mountain. Like this, I feel like that whole internal monologue is the beginning of Veins of Gold as he's thinking about the use of Callandor.
Agreed,
he's thinking about all those sorts of things. Like this is the beginning of the thought process. Interrupted by Tam and really spurred by Tam, right? But this introspection began at the beginning of this chapter, and that's one continual thought process that leads to Veins of Gold.
Yeah, no, because Veins of Gold is just too big to pack into one chapter. It's simply too big. You need multiple chapters to really make the conclusion hit like it should.
These are the foothills of the mountain that is Veins of Gold.
Yes, yes.
And so, yeah, then we go to Min and Codswain sort of talk, and Tam then later comes in and being like, what did you do to my boy? But this is a pretty short chapter, actually.
Yeah, so I guess I'll read us in.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Chapter 48, Reading the Commentary. And our symbol is Cadswain's hair ornaments, the moon and stars. Min sat in Cadswain's small room, waiting, with the others, to hear the result of Rand's meeting with his father. A low fire burned in the fireplace, and lamps at each corner of the room lent light to the women, who worked at various busying activities, embroidery, darning, and knitting, to keep their minds off of the weight. Min was past regretting her decision to make an alliance with Cadswain. Regret had come early, during the first few days when Cadswain had kept Min close, asking after every viewing she had had about Rand. The woman was meticulous as a brown, writing down each vision and answer. It was like being in the White Tower again. Min wasn't certain why naive submission to Cadswain had given the woman license to interrogate Min, but that was how Cadswain seemed to interpret it. Mix that with Min's discomfort around Rand lately and her own desire to figure out just what Cadswain and the Wise Ones were planning, and she seemed to spend practically all of her time in the woman's presence. Yes, regret had come and gone. Min had moved on to resignation, tinged with a hint of frustration. Cadswain knew quite a bit about the material Min was studying in her books, but the woman doled out her knowledge like cloudberry jam, a little reward for good behavior, always hinting that there was more to come. That kept Min from fleeing. She had to find the answers. Rand needed them. And yeah, that's the situation, is she is working on her final PhD research paper, and she feels no closer to the answer than when she started this damn degree.
But I feel like it interacts a little bit with the way Rand's thinking, right? Where like he's like, the Callandor is such a box, and she's like, no, but the prophecy says you need it, and we need to figure out how you need it.
And she's in there critiquing the PhDs who have come before her, being like, I think they're misinterpreting this. I think they're getting this wrong. And Cadsway is saying, yeah, I agree. These guys are wrong about shit. They're just very wrong. Like, it's on the one hand, it's like, oh, Min's not original. On the other hand, if she is the second person to come up with this critique after Cadswain, that's good enough. That's like being the second strongest channeler after Nynaeve. It's still pretty freaking good.
Well, and she takes it a step further, right? Because they later realize it's not even referring to Rand.
Right? Yeah. There's layers to this.
And I think the fact that the prophecy says hands, plural, should be their first clue.
I hadn't even noticed that, but you're right. You're right.
He shall hold a blade of light in his hands, plural, and the three shall be one. Can't be Rand.
Yeah, if he has to be explicitly one-handed by a different prophecy, that does sort of imply that but again, translations are hard, right? It could be a mistranslation of the plural versus the singular, and you have to include that. It is a clue. It is a clue.
But I think it's referring to, it's when Moradin has the blade, right? That's them taking control of Moradin in this situation.
Yeah, and they use him to use the true power to undo the boar.
And the three shall become one. What do I think the three are?
The three powers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saidin, Saidar, and the true power.
Yeah. Yeah, they become one seamless whole as they were in the beginning before time.
Mm-hmm. And that's how you seal the Dark One's prison.
Right. I like Min's moment of thinking, is all my study useless? No, I have to believe that it is useful. This is what I can do. It's like Egwene with her White Tower thing. It's just, this is what I've chosen to do. And even if I'm not seeing results in this moment, it's still what I need to be doing.
I thought it was interesting that all of these women who had sworn themselves to Rand end up under Codswain's control simply because they're not welcome around him anymore. And they're like, well, if we're not welcome around Rand, what are we going to do? And it's just like he's handing all of this power to Codswain simply by not being a good steward of the women who have sworn themselves to him.
And it's also interesting, too, with what you were saying in the last chapter about how she's in many ways trying to be an antagonist to him, like very deliberately. Like, it does mean that she gathers all of the women who are trying to help him, but who he can't stand. Kind of like how he uses Egwene to gather all of his opposition to breaking the seals. I feel like Cadswain is almost like using her antagonism with Rand to make sure she also will have control over all of his Aes Sedai would-be allies.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Like, if you really want to help him, you're going to help me, which means I will have control over you and a short leash to keep you on.
Which, I mean, ever since the cleansing, right, where she was basically put in charge of the field troops, it seems like, you know, I almost wish he'd embraced her more as a field commander of his troops and of the Aes Sedai.
She's a green.
Explicitly put her in charge of your Aes Sedai who have come to your side and sworn loyalty to you instead of this whole stealing. I think that would have been a better way to use her in the story if he'd been just like, fine, you want control? You swear I'm going to put you in control of the Aes Sedai. But then I feel like she'd have to kind of swear to him somehow.
Which she would never do. And then there's all the Aes Sedai Amerlin stuff, blah, 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 meow, meow, meow. But yeah, she's a green who's good at battlefield command. It would be nice to see her used for that somehow.
More than even a lot of the Reds, right? Against channelers and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, if only because she's older and has been doing this in the field for longer than most of them have been alive.
Min wasn't certain why Nynaeve's submission to Codswain had given the woman license to interrogate Min, but that's how Codswain seemed to interpret it. Any idea why? It's just like, oh, you don't have anyone to protect her anymore, I think is what it is.
I think that's what it is, yeah. And there's no one of the Aes Sedai who will protect you from me, and no one to give you reason to think that you are right to resist me. So yeah, Min can feel that Rand is in pain. She's not quite putting together, why, but, this is... He's talking with Tam and dealing with all of that intensity. As Nynaeve is pacing back and forth. And Min then, says, I think this passage is wrong. And Beldine is really passive-aggressive about it. And it's like, and Cadswain, says, hey, Beldine, you have something caught in your throat. You want to share with the class? Beldine's like, no, I don't have anything to say. I just need to make random snorting noises every time this child thinks that she's good enough to do a hard academic studies. And I like how Cadswain just walks Beldine through embarrassing herself.
Yes.
It's satisfying that Cadswain is like, so that's your opinion, Min. I give your opinion exactly as much, if not more weight, as Beldine, who I gave seniority because she is Aes Sedai, but that's the only respect she gets. Anyway, continuing with the conversation I found interesting, Min. I appreciate that. I appreciate the put down that Beldine gets there.
Yeah, I love this one. That is a very unconventional interpretation. Beldine smiled thinly, thinking she's won because she's like, that's what the teacher says. Oh, that's an unconventional interpretation. Turning back to embroidery. Of course, Codswain says, you are quite right. And that's what?
Yeah, because it's Codswain. Codswain always approves of the unconventional interpretation. That's her entire career.
And all of the successful Aes Sedai are the ones who had the lessons outside the tower. And were unconventional, yeah.
Or who broke the rules and received very specific rewards for doing so. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, Codswain says that line is why I'm here in the plot at all. Like, yes, you have picked up on an incongruity. Good job, man.
So that's when they discussed that Rand needs to use it in a circle of 3, which, yes, but no. Like, because he does use it as as part of the circle, but then, like, he accidentally gives it to Moradin, right? That's his little deception. He's like, oh, no, you stole it from me.
Well, but Moradin would never have stolen it if he wasn't genuinely using it first, right? Like, that's part of how he induces Moradin to take it.
Then we get a couple of Min prophecies, right? We get Nynaeve kneeling over someone's corpse in a posture of grief.
I think that's Moradin's body or that's Rand's body with Moradin's soul in it. I think that's the Nynaeve not getting it about the body swap.
I think it could be Egwene.
Oh.
I know there's no body, but like...
Oh. But this is a Rand chapter. No, I think it's her being mad about how she can't heal Rand's body at the end. And she keeps just dumping power into it, and it won't.
Okay, because there is an actual body.
Yeah. She's like kneeling. She's like in the tent, like crying and trying to get him to heal.
And since she's not one of the 3, she doesn't know he's okay.
Right, exactly. Though I think she does, figure it out because of the way their eyes don't twitch. And then, stalks over to Avienda to demand answers. And that's the last we see of her. And then the black knife around Beldine's head. No idea what that is. What is that?
Yes. She dies in the last battle at the Field of Marilor, killed by Sharans. So one would assume she, we see her warder die. We don't see her die, but her warder is stabbed to death by Sharans. So one would assume she died by a similar.
Okay. So the black knife represents the Sharan attack, whether literal or figurative. That's probably what that is. Okay. Cool. I would have guessed a blood knife, but the blood knives are also a very distinctive dagger, not the black knife. So yeah, good. Knowing she dies by the Sharan attack, that makes sense. And then Codswain's being remarkably candid with Min, and they're having a really good little academic discussion. And then Tam barges in to be like, "What the actual fuck has happened to my son?" Which is the correct dadly response that you would expect from Tam.
Yeah, well, especially when, like, hey, your name set him off in a murderous rage. Why is your name specifically causing him to go off in a murderous rage? You have done something to him, because that is not normal.
And Codswain says, I encouraged him towards civility. I'm sorry, Codswain, but no. The 3 O's should not be allowing you to say that.
And I noticed that the room got darker when he entered. I feel like that's something that, like, Rand doesn't notice, and we didn't see that from Rand's POV. But here's Tam saying, dude, like, he has this era of darkness around him. We've seen it in the other chapters ever since he started channeling the true power. Anyone with any sensitivity is seeing it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Tam taught him the flame and the void. He doesn't have to be a channeler to be able to pick up on, like, the vibes. It's just like an Ogier, right? Like, gets just an energy. Like, yeah, someone who meditates a lot is going to also be a little more attuned. And Rand was not being subtle with his vibe. This is not someone who is trying to hide their darkness.
No. He doesn't even know that it's there to hide it.
Right, exactly. And then we see the flame and the void from the outside, right? Tam takes one breath and then just the anger goes away.
Oh, I missed that.
We've seen that from the inside a million times, but this is one of the only times we ever see it from the outside. And then he, reports on the meeting in a much calmer fashion, but also not mincing any words. And Codswain says, okay, did you do all the things I said that you should do? And Tam says, yeah, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how to talk to my 20-year-old traumatized son that you have been bullying for the past 6 months. I do.
Oh, and I love his response to her. I've known men who, when channeled, always turn to their fists for answers. I've never liked Aes Sedai. I was happy to be rid of them when I returned to my farm. A bully is a bully, whether she uses the strength of her arm or other means.
And the audience stood up and cheered.
Yeah, thank God. And it's like when we call Codswain a bully, it's like, yeah, in canon, like Tam also is calling her a bully, right? Like we don't just make that up out of nowhere. She's a bully, canonically.
And he says that as she has lifted him in the air in an attempt to intimidate him and to stop telling her the truth that she needs to hear. She's like, I don't like hearing that. I'm going to try to scare you with my big scary Aes Sedai powers. And from the air, he says, a bully is a bully. Do your worst. But yeah, when Tam said that, it just felt so validating for all of the bullshit that I had gone back and forth about Cadsuane. Like, is she a bully? Is she effective? Does he need tough love? Does he need gentle parenting? Like, is Cadsuane wrong? Is Cadsuane right? And then to have Tam, who is amazing and perfect and can do no wrong, come in and say, no, you're a bully and it's not working, was just like, okay, I know which side of the fence I'm on. Finally, at long last, I can stop waffling. She is a bully. She means well, and she is using horrible tactics to achieve her ends. I am decided.
And they're all pointing, fingers. Tam's pointing fingers at her, and Nynaeve's pointing fingers back at Tam, saying, if you'd listen. And Min goes, no, it's all of your fault, because you're trying to make him do stuff instead of supporting him.
Right, like, again, maybe listen to the person who knows him best instead of to your own internal narratives about what you think he should be, which does include Tam because he's a parent, right? He's like, well, my little boy should be XYZ. And Min is like the one who's like, well, but the man is. And yeah, so the 1-2 punch of Tam and Min being like, you're a bully and you all need to stop making him do things is just the released out breath of those two comments.
And I think that's just the readout. The last few sentences of the chapter is all I have left.
Yeah, we've cleared the air. Rand is insane. Cadsuane's a bully. And Min is the only one in Rand's corner, truly. All right, readout. And what happened then? Nynaeve asked. He seemed to be distracted by something suddenly, Tam said. He took that little statue and dashed through the gateway. Cadsuane raised an eyebrow. And did you see, by chance, where that gateway took him? West, Min thought. Far to the west. I'm not certain, Tam admitted. It was dark, though I thought... What? Nynaeve prodded. Ebudar, Min said, surprising them all. He's gone to destroy the Shanshan, just as he told the maidens he would. I don't know about that last part, Tam said, but it did look like Ebudar. Light preserve us, Corell whispered.
And yeah, we continue the walkabout in the next chapter.
Yeah, Rand has hit his nadir. He is running away from his problems, and we will catch up with him next week as he decides whether or not the last hunt will happen.
And I gotta say, the next two chapters are pretty short in terms of page count.
Yeah, the Sanderlanche is picking up speed.
It's definitely picking up speed. Like lots of things are happening. The density is very, very high in these chapters. Both of these chapters were low page count, and yet we still managed to talk about them for, nearly an hour and a half. So, and it was a dense hour and a half too. So
Yeah, it's intense. This is emotionally heavy, and there's a lot of conclusions that require processing. Woof.
But yeah, basically, I think we'll be, and with too low, I think we should be able to get the epilogue in the next recording.
Probably, yeah.
Because they're just all very short, 3 short chapters. So I think we should be able to squeeze in the epilogue in the next recording, now that I look at it.
Yeah, let's plan on that.
Okay.
And Miss Podunka will be happy, always egging us on to do more. Yeah, I think we should finish the book today.
Yeah, we haven't prepped for that. But yeah, no, we will finish it next week.
Yeah, this is very, very exciting.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Please rate and review us on your podcast app, and consider supporting us on Patreon for ad-free episodes. What Spoilers is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.